E pā oro atu nei te reo rāhiri, anō nei ko ngā tai pāpaki o te motu e ngā kākura o Aotearoa, piri mai rā ki tēnei wānanga. Welcome to Mata with me, Mihingarangi Forbes, brought to you by Te Māngai Pāho and Irirangi Te Motu, New Zealand on Air. The war in Tehran may feel a world away, but its impacts are already hitting home. With the cost of kai rising and fuel prices spiralling, whānau across Aotearoa are feeling the squeeze, and there is no relief in sight. Te Pāti Māori co-leader and energy spokesperson Deb Ngawera-Packer is calling for urgent action, writing to the Prime Minister to push for a cross-party forum on energy security and cost of living relief. So what does this all mean for Māori? How much worse could it get, and is the government moving fast enough? Hei hora I ona whakaro mo tēnei take, me te mahano atu ko hono mai a Deb Ngawera-Packer. Tēnā koe te tuakana, kei te pewhia.
Pai ana koe.
Pai rawa atu. Your electorate is both rural and urban. What are you hearing about how the war is affecting your constituents?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there's a lot of anxiety about what they don't know. And I think the resilience within communities, particularly the communities that I represent and whakapapa too, are able to lead themselves really strongly. They've proved it multiple times. And more recently in their iwi tikanga-led COVID responses. So there's a lot of anxiety about what they don't know. And there's been a lot of sharing and caring in the preparation phase. But, you know, knowledge is powerful, knowing when to prepare. When you're looking across, you know, the ocean and Australia's in level 2, and taking a real responsible approach with the information, that's, you know, the anxiety of when do we know what we have coming and what are the actual facts so we can prepare and look after each other. So yeah.
Hea o whakaro, when you look at your electorate, te tai hauaru, what are the real risks that you can see for your rohe?
I think, you know, first of all, I live in the middle of the energy mecca. So, you know, there is a lot of knowledge about what a lack of fuel will mean. We have large rural communities that don't have public transport. We have pockets of hauora, pockets of you know, main hospitals where whānau have to travel to for treatment to even see GPs. Most of I think we have one pack and save in the whole of Taranaki. You go down to Whanganui, you go down to Manawatu, they're all supported by rural communities that have to go into town to shop. So, you know, all that sort of kaupapa. We have whānau that, you know, have to transport their tamariki to kura because there aren't buses available. So, you know, the every day-to-day living here is extremely reliant on the ability to mobilise. We have a lot of our contractors, a lot of industries here that are extremely reliant on diesel. And at the same time, we have a large proportion of our community, especially that have been wanting to transition away from fossils, who have been fighting seabed mining for, you know, years, and have been pushing for alternative solutions in our infrastructure, and they're not seeing the alternative solutions coming as well. So, yeah, you know, I think we've got a lot of those dynamics.
Let's talk about energy, because you are the energy spokesperson for Te Pāti Māori, and you've requested, you know, you sent a letter, you requested the coalition government initiate a cross-party committee on energy security and cost of living mitigation. What's the response been?
Nothing. In fact, a couple of days after MB reached out and the Prime Minister's office reached out to give us a brief on what it is that they know and we're doing. But of course, you know, it's not in real time. Even the data that we get on the supply of fuel, you know, Monday's data was from Wednesday midnight. Yesterday's data was from Sunday. So it was lip service. We haven't officially heard from the Prime Minister. I haven't had an official response to it. So, you know, wahanga.
What would a cross-party initiative look like in your mind? What would you discuss?
Yeah, and I think the first thing we would discuss is the communities that we represent, and to make sure that there is a proactive, preemptive um, response being thought about. We know that NEMA come in is led by MB when we go into various, phases or levels, whatever you want to call it. So it would make sure that what we learnt within our Māori iwi led response is appreciated and factored in, that the diversities and the dynamics that our own communities have to contend with is factored in. What's really concerning is that this is a government that hasn't had a great relationship with Māori, with our communities, and has created some real harm. So, what it would look like is an inclusive response, and that's what we're really pushing for, and just get over each other's politics and actually think about our communities that are going to be hurt the most. And I will say, we tried for this during COVID at one stage. Simon Bridges led an opposition approach, but there's always this anxiety about partnering during crisis and sort of trying to catch each other out of the government tower. I just think it's the best thing to do for our small nation.
What more should they be doing, do you think? So far, no rationing. Is that a mistake?
I think the mistake is that they're pretending that everything's okay, and there is no a real reluctance to move through levels, or whatever they want to call it, because of their triggering from COVID. And what we should be seeing now is some timelines. We should be seeing information shared in real time. We should know regionally what is the stock, what are the issues happening at a regional level, because all we're seeing is national figures. What we should then be able to hear is what is the next phase needed to be, and do we need to have preempted rationing now? And it's not about knee jerk and panicking everyone. It's actually giving our communities the trust that they deserve to be able to consider what they could be doing now, instead of just landing everything on them at the 11th hour. And I think that's the problem. So, yeah, I think it would look like information sharing, data sharing, making sure that regionally everyone knows and the various leaders within the regions know, and that there is, again, a whole of community approach to be able to address what rationing should look like, instead of just being told, hey, this is it. We haven't had who is going to be identified within the various bans that they talked about. And I think, again, there's lessons to be learned. The New Zealand Royal Commission, the Tribunal, all gave really good lessons of what to be able to learn from in the past, and we shouldn't deny that experience of the communities.
Just wondering how you would rate this coalition's response in general, not just the fuel crisis, the war in general.
Oh, look, I think it's disgusting that we have a Prime Minister that went out and joined a letter of condemnation to Iran for stopping shipping, and didn't actually condemn a nation that has not only affected a genocide, has now legalized execution, and with America, started their Israel-American war. And I think what we've got here is an alliance that has created real damage, not only physically and peace-wise, but to the reputation of Aotearoa. And I think that the whole government's politics in this has weighted us down, and we should be and should have called this out for what it is, distance ourselves from the warmongering, and be able to then keep open our own diplomatic relationships, because we're going to see a phase of how this fuel crisis is going to happen. It's going, Asia and Africa and Europe, and it's all happening in phases. In the meantime, we're stuck in a diplomatic relationship that's going to hinder our ability to mobilise. Now, I'm also not a pro-fossil fuel person. I think we should also have looked at our own sovereignty, our own nationhood, and this government's just been worrying about offshore relationships and corporates.
You're fairly critical of this coalition and the government and the moves that they've made, but I guess they might say that they are bound by a traditional alliance, and they've done what they've had to do.
Well, I think it's tradition that's got us into this situation in the first place. Is the traditional reliance on extraction, the traditional reliance on not listening to your communities. A traditional reliance has cost us our own energy sovereignty. And, we've got Shane Jones that's had, over 2 years now to address the energy sovereignty, the energy security of Aotearoa, and they haven't. So it's really hard. I mean, if I can just, in context, we had a previous government, and I criticised them a lot too during the COVID response and how Māori were left behind at the beginning. But one of the things that they did do is acknowledge that of the 30 permits that were existing in 2020 in offshore oil exploration, hardly any of them were producing. And they weren't going to continue to produce unless government put in a subsidy. That was a sure red flag, surely to have started our own infrastructure and renewable energy. But here we are, stuck in traditional economy with traditional relationships that are hurting our people. We needed to have left it a long time ago.
Yeah, the coalition goal is to double renewable energy by 2050 with initiatives like offshore wind farms. Nonetheless, you are publicly calling out Energy Minister Shane Jones, criticising him for talking tough on sovereignty and resilience over the past 2 years. But as you say, and I quote, "Matua Shane, the cupboard is still bare." He would argue he's doing everything in his power to secure fuel for the country. What would you say to that?
Well, where is it? That's what I would say is, where is it? Because while you're doing that, we could have had, the money that went into landlords, for example, could have made 600,000 to 700,000 solar rooftops on people's rooftops. We could have had less of a reliance on this extractive energy industry, whose profits go offshore, by the way. And we could have actually had our own modelling. Where is it? Where's the storage? Where's the response to his report on Marsden Point? Where is it? And I think, talk is cheap, and we see a lot of steam come off, that particular minister, but actually we've seen no action. And this week in the House has been really flat. It's been really interesting watching the government, because normally they'll deflect when something's going on. Their interjections has been flat, and I think they're really worried. And I think for a long time we've been saying this and hammering on about this, and I think it's come to fruition. Shane has been caught out. There is no imminent solution, and addressing harmonisation with Australia isn't addressing, the big issue of supply. It's just buying time.
On the Marsden Point storage issue, Minister Jones is hoping for late May, but are you saying too little, too late?
Yeah, I'm saying too little, too late, and I think by the end of April. And again, I don't want to panic anyone. I just think that's really important. We do our own due diligence because we can't trust the government's information. It's delayed, it's outdated, and so I think by the end of April we're going to see some real pain. We don't know where the May-June supply is coming from. The data that we're getting is outdated. It's days old before we get it. So are
you saying we're not getting the full picture, Deb? Are you saying that our fuel stock situation is not as we see it? Are you suggesting that the MB fuel stock numbers, the 57 days of petrol, 52 of diesel, 46 of jet fuel, aren't robust?
No, I'm saying that they're not real time. So when we got the information on Monday morning and they made that known, it got missed, it was till Wednesday midnight. So that was 5 days behind. I think yesterday we got 3.5 days behind information. And, that's not good enough. And we're also getting the national supply. So while the national figure may look like this, what's the figure into Taihawaru? What's the figure in Whanganui? What's the storage issue in Tamaki Makaurau, which is a major concern that we don't know. And I think, that's, we hammered on about that in the House yesterday. We had 5 questions. Every MP in the party asked questions, and we were across Labour's all asking questions. And we've been met with deaf ears. Now, we've got a delayed response. We're watching our neighbours who we're apparently harmonising with in a level 2 with 50% off their fuel tax. Here in Aotearoa, we've got outdated data, and we've been told to trust the data. No, it's not acceptable. And I think the reassurance is it's just really delay dressed up as leadership. And we don't even see that leader. He's delegated to everyone else. So
you're asking for those regional stock numbers. You've also asked exactly how many ships are due, and confirmed, and how many weeks away. Do you have that information?
No, we've put written questions in. I mean, the Prime Minister gave rehearsed answers yesterday. We have written questions in asking for the exact amount And then we've asked for the exact supply chain and amount for May and June. And I think, I just think that we're smart and sharp enough in our communities to receive the information, to not panic. We are an innovative, nation. We're known for our innovation. We punch above our weight, and Māori specifically play a major part in that emergency crisis across the nation. Always have, in climate and COVID, whatever. I think the sooner they can give us the data, the sooner that our leadership can, amongst our communities and ourselves as the households, can understand it, the better we can prepare. I think, what I'm hearing certainly in our lecture and across in the party is that people are tired of hearing, we're managing it, we're managing the risk, and they're tired of being told to effectively trust us. No, they want information. They deserve it.
Knowing what you know, what do you suggest our whānau do in the regions and in the cities in terms, are you suggesting that they begin to ration?
Yeah, I am. And I have been attending multiple hui, sharing what intel we know, and obviously talking across to others, including others in other nations, to sort of say, how have you dealt with this, including those who are in communities and nations that are under extreme stress about it. And I think, we should be applying our own manaaki, our own rangatiratanga, our mana motahaki, and how we do this. And I'm seeing it already. The kura and our sports are using vans to pick up everyone. I'm seeing some of our local iwi are now set up ability to work in different pods and offices within their own community so they don't have to travel. I'm seeing thinking and planning being done to be able to identify vulnerable people, including our kaumātua, to be able to get their groceries and things. And I think that's really easing in, understanding it, and starting that community thinking. When you live collectively and you think collectively, you plan differently. I don't think the government, is doing that. They today, this morning, laid down something for workers' support, home support. Then yesterday laid down. They're thinking in silos and pockets. What we need is a plan that has input from various regional leaders, including iwi, and Māori providers, and being able to come up with a really good, solid, calm plan. The fact that they're not doing that creates panic.
We've been talking about our communities and the nation, but what about our responsibility to the Pacific Islands, who rely heavily on diesel for energy and power? We love to have a holiday in the islands, but what sort of responsibility do we have to them in the tough times?
I think the same that we do to each other. I mean, we're talking about our own whanaunga and our own tuakana, so we have to make sure that there is a really good relationship and a really good, again, flow of information and preparedness, and making sure that we have ensured the stock that is coming or not coming is catering for the fact that our island, our Pacifica whānau, rely on diesel for their power. Their whole economy is reliant on fuel. So, and you can see it when you go into Rarotonga, like there's a lot of solar at the airport and things like that. I think this is a really good kick up the nono for the government and its lackluster approach to renewable energy, but it's also we're going to have to advocate and lobby and make sure they don't leave people behind, our own whanaunga behind, for the sake of corporate interests. And I think that's my biggest fear. So this is a government that has been very Atlas-led, very corporate-led, and we need to make sure that it has our people at the heart of what it's planning to do.
The government has announced a couple of initiatives to help struggling families. Obviously, the $50 extra targeted at that, working families with children, that will kick in next week on the 7th. Also this morning, Health Minister Simeon Brown just announced care workers will be getting some support, so 30% boost to the mileage rate, which will bump them up to 82 cents per K, still considerably less than what the IRD suggests contractors are paid, $1.17. Is it enough?
No, of course it's not enough. And again, we're seeing the repeat of that same cycle where essential workers, where critical people who are on the ground looking after our kaumātua, our tangata haua, our isolated communities, are left out. When you've got the 82 cents to 117, which Simeon's getting per kilometre, or he's probably getting a free ministerial car, to be honest. But, there is no accommodation for the hardship and the choices they're going to have to make. And I've met with some of them at Puriro and Pōneke and really listened to the challenges that they're having to confront. Do I go to this one today? I had to replace my tyres. Can I afford to go out from Puriro to the hut where my clients are? And they love their clients. But it's a real, they're subsidising the government while they're doing really important mahi. So, ka roha to them, because I think, again, if we had a cross-party approach and we were able to factor in their views, the union's views, these wouldn't be creating the angst that they're creating now. And there's a solution to all of this, and it was our first one, which was to come together with a cross-party approach, bring in all the the various advocates and groups. Let's get on and identify what is the best plan for phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. All we're hearing is we're doing all we can not to get into phase 3 or 4. We're doing all we can to deny that there's an issue. We're doing all we can, to delay a response. And I really think we deserve better.
When we're talking, we've been talking about Māori whānau, mostly just in the household, but so much of our iwi settlements are now invested in primary industry. What are you hearing from iwi leaders?
We've got one example where they're in a business that's on the maunga. Its generator, which comes into kick during winter, needs to work, and they're really concerned about where that diesel supply will come in isolated positions like that. We've got marae that are known as crisis centre. If there's any climate issue, which we've seen happen a lot, what that will mean to their emergency equipment. I've heard the horticulture business that we have in Te Taihawaru that's been really concerned again about how things are going to get trucked and where the new stock is going to come from, and so there's again all this uncertainty. They haven't heard anything from primary industry. They haven't heard anything from anyone, and so you're trying to plan and mitigate something in the absence again of any information. And I don't think that's just isolated to our primary sector. We're hearing from the fishing industry. We had a conversation with Ali Brooks, who's a small commercial fisherman, and he's sort of talking about we're already bearing the costs, what this is going to mean. So there is this big chasm of nothingness is really hard to plan. And around here, we've seen jobs cut, we've seen businesses closed down, and I really think that the government needs to get off its high horse of where we don't want to create debt, we don't want to add to the economy, and actually adding to the economy is also about affecting the economy is also looking after the well-being of our businesses. Small businesses haven't been affected at all in anything that they're doing, so there's real angst. Yeah.
It's been a rough 6 months for Te Pāti Māori. What's this period been like for you personally as a co-leader?
Yeah, really, really rough, revealing. I've sort of kept what it is that I learnt within being an uri of parihaka is to be hopeful, to stay dignified, to show respect, which is why I've been really wahangu. And I continue to be really hopeful. I love our movement. I've never been in any other political movement. And when you've been a part of something that, was taken out in 2017 and brought it back, you stay collectively focused on the well-being of that movement. So, yeah.
Is it the right time to be wahangu, though? You are the leader of a party. Māori voters are asking what's going on. We interviewed Maria Mino, listened to Tākuta's press conference last couple of weeks back. They're leaving the door open to you guys. Can you work through this?
I think what I'm hearing and really concerned about making sure that my voice is used for the right purpose, and that is to fight against a government that has no regard or respect for our people, that has had 99 legislative attacks on Te Tiriti, that is dealing with a world that's normalised genocide, that's now dealing with not only climate crisis, but certainly dealing with the fuel crisis and I think the cost of living. So for me, it's been really clear who I'm here for, what we react to. I have conflict every day in my life, and where as a Māori wahine, I'm sure you have seen it in iwi hapu, whānau dynamics. And I think conversations should happen. and they should happen out and away from the media. They should happen with respect, face to face. And my focus is always going to be on the pain that our people are feeling, why we're here, the privilege we have to have our voices in that house, because so many others would love to have that privilege and continue to fight on for our people. And that's where I'll always put my voice first.
You are talking about these big raru that are international and national in our communities, but this one's just a tiny internal one. Can you sort it out?
I think everyone can sort out anything if they have the ability to do that.
But you, as a co-leader, as a co-leader,
I won't, and I've been really dignified and respectful in this kaupapa. I won't use media to discuss it. I think it belongs where it belongs.
So how are you going to talk to the Māori voters then? How are you go? It's 6 to 7 months away. They need to know who they're going to vote for. They need to know if the party is intact. What do you say to them?
I think the party shows that it's punching above its weight, and it will turn up and it will show up no matter what's going on around it, whether it's personal conflict, whether it's a climate crisis, whether it's a fuel crisis. And there is no one else that is going to love and see you and feel you like Te Pāti Māori does. In spite of challenges, we will always fight for our people. And that's where, my ngākau is for our people.
Hei kōrero whakamutunga, what's your message to whānau out there that are bit worried about this crisis?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's look after each other and make sure that you are able to do your information research, get information from people you trust. And if I was to say anything, every day we hold kaupapa at our marae. We don't know if 1,000 are going to turn up or 100. So use what's in your DNA. Use what you know, which is in your wakapapa, to prepare, and be calm. Just be calm and look after each other.
Ko Deb Ngawera-Packer tērā, kaiarahi takirua o Te Pāti Māori. Nō reira, e te iwi, ngā tauwhirotanga o te wāhingaro kia koutou, kia matāra, kia ita, naia a wawata nui kia hora te maungarongo ki te whenua, tēnā koutou katoa. E whakaute atu nei, kia te Māngai Pāho, me irirangi te motu, nā rawa tēnei hōtaka I taunaki. We'll be back with more mata in a fortnight. Nō horo mai.
Ko te reo, te take.